fisherman's buzz. More fish, more often.
Hello and welcome once again to the Fisherman's Post Saltwater Podcast Series. This episode today is titled Winter Trout Fishing with Artificials. And I have talking to us today Captain Stu Caulder of Gold Leader Guide Service out of the Wrightsville Beach area. And we're going to be talking about those winter fish patterns. We're going to be talking about lure selection. We're going to be talking about presentation. And Stu Caulder is going to walk us through both the ICW and the river habitats, different things happen in those two different habitats with the winter trout. I'm Gary Hurley of Fisherman's Post. Fisherman's Post has been serving the saltwater fishing community of North Carolina since 2003. We've been bringing you fishing reports, fishing information, fishing tournaments, fishing schools, and now in this latest and greatest chapter, the Fisherman's Post Saltwater Podcast Series. In this podcast series, we reach out to our captain and guide friends from up and down the North Carolina coast to share with us their insights and knowledge on how to catch more fish more often. But truly, our goal is not just catching more fish more often, but getting you and your family and your friends out on the water, spending more time together more often. And I'm joined this week, I am joined every week by my partner, my production partner, and I'm talking about Billy Thorpe of Thorpe Creative. Hello, Billy from afar.
What's up, Gary? How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. I tell you, I'm feeling a little exposed. I'm more comfortable doing this podcast with you right there by my side in the same space and this Skyping in or whatever, this e-camming in. I don't know if I'm on my game.
Hey, man, it looks good. You look really good over there, even from a distance. You look better in person, but you look good from afar. No big deal.
This is an old friend, so I wanted to that we're interviewing. So I wanted to wear one of my best white T-shirts. I did want to make a point not to shower, not to shave, just out of respect for Stu Caulder.
Yeah, just to make him feel more comfortable as well, right?
Yeah, he needs it, man. This poor guy, he needs every help he can get.
Well, Gary, as I do always, just want to thank everyone for watching, for listening. Gary and I really appreciate the support. And for those who don't know how to do the opposite of what you're doing currently, I'll show you this little social slide here. We have, you can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, Google Podcasts, most recently Apple or Amazon Music rather. And then also you can watch these videos on YouTube and really appreciate everyone subscribing to our channels and rating and reviewing us. It really helps with the algorithm. So if you get value from these podcasts, which you'd be crazy if you don't, I've learned so many things. Be sure to subscribe to those. It really helps us keep the podcast going. Keeps our sponsors super happy. We're super happy to have Marine Warehouse Center. We really appreciate those guys. And got a new video, Gary. Here we go. I'm going to roll it.
I'm in.
As you know, it's been a great year for boat sales. However, it's been really tough for customers to find boats in stock. We're the headquarters in Wilmington, North Carolina for Para Customs, Sailfish, Sea Chaser, and Carolina Skiff. Our manufacturers are telling us the high demand for boats is going to affect 2021 inventory as well. So if you're looking to get a boat in the spring, you need to come sign up with us now.
You know what? I love that commercial, but I'm really sad. I'm like, you know what? If they don't have enough boats to sell, they're never going to give me one.
If they're short of boats to sell, then I think your instincts are correct, Billy. Hey, we've got some extra boats lying around. Let's just give one to Billy, that poor guy.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
All right. Well, if you guys need a boat, you better go over there to Marine Warehouse and sign up now to, I guess, even to find a used one. That's crazy, man. Boat market's crazy right now.
Boat market's crazy, and I'll tell you what else. And that dude, Terrell, is crazy. One of the owners of Marine Warehouse Center. I mean, that guy came over, he insisted, as he does like every week. And I came over, pulled a tray of pigs in the blanket out of the oven and just started eating them. Told me to join in. And as he does, he told me this joke. I have it written down because I didn't even memorize it. But would you like to hear Terrell's joke?
I would love to.
Well, Terrell told me, give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Give a man a poisonous fish, Feed them for a lifetime.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that one.
I think he was high on pigs in a blanket. I didn't see him drink anything, but he ate so many of those things so fast. I think he had a food buzz, and he just didn't even know what he was saying.
I mean, what is a pigs in a blanket anyway? Is that like the fancy person way of saying corn dog? Like, I don't know.
No, man. Well, I mean, a croissant wrapped around a little hot dog. I guess that's a fancy corn dog.
That's a corn dog.
I still feel like it's a blue collar meal. I don't know.
I don't know.
If pigs in a blanket is a fancy meal to you, Billy, then give up your hopes and aspirations for a boat.
I'm going to need more sponsors for the show.
Go ahead and get a canoe.
I know, right? Oh, man.
Show me a fish photo.
Here we go. Here we go. Where's that fish photo at? Oh, look here. Kirk Bandy from Statesville, North Carolina, with a 7-pound speckled trout caught in the Cape Fear River on live bait, weighed in at Wildlife Bait and Tackle. Man, what a fat fish. Jeez.
Yeah,
looks like my ex-girlfriend.
Oh.
Wah, wah, wah. Where's my sound effects?
I don't have any. But yes, we have a trout out of the Cape Fear River, and that's one of the elements we're going to talk to Captain Stu Caulder about. But Billy, before I get to Captain Stu Caulder, a reminder that we are looking for Billy's best takeaway at the end of the show. Billy's best takeaway. And I have a feeling Stu's going to drop some real knowledge on you, so you should have no trouble picking out. Well, maybe that'll be the trouble, which one to pick out, because I have a feeling a lot's coming our way.
Well,
all right.
Let's get to it, Gary. Let's get those trout, baby. Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to Captain Stu Caulder of Gold Leader Guide Service, and he's operating out of the Wrightsville Beach area. Longtime friend. We're going to talk about winter trout fishing with artificials. And again, we're going to talk about fish patterns. We're going to talk about lure selection, presentation, and we're going to make sure we cover both the river and the ICW. Welcome to the show, Stu Caulder.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
Yeah, man. Good to see you. Good to see
you, man.
And I know you're already impressed with the level of the joke that I just told about everything professional about this show. But before we hear what you have to say about winter trout fishing, I got 2 questions for you, Stu Caulder. Are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready. Go ahead. Give it to me.
All right. Question number 1. These people that have tuned in and they're tired of hearing Billy and I talk, why should they continue to listen to you? Why should they listen to you have anything to say about a speckled trout?
Well, I've been fishing for these, trout since I was a little kid, since I was probably 5 years old, standing on the rock wall with my dad, throwing mirror lures and grubs and him holding on to my belt. I'm 51 years old now. I've probably been fishing for him for 45 years, since I was a little munchkin. I've been guiding for 20 years. And one of my primary targets is speckled trout. I mean, I love to trout fish. I like to catch red drum, but I love to trout fish. I like to catch them on top water or jerk bait, soft plastics. I've been fishing everywhere from the New River all the way down to ICW, from Topsail to Rich's Inlet to Wrightsville to Carolina Beach and the Cape Fear River. Mostly now, probably about 95% of my trips are all on the Cape Fear River, and I've been fishing that pretty hard now for probably the last 25 years. So I've kind of learned the patterns and the movements of the fish and the little nuances that kind of direct their movement, especially in the river. The intercoastal waterway stuff is a little easier for me anyway. The river can be a little more difficult because you have a few more variables you have to add in there. But, I've just been fishing for these guys on artificials ever since I can remember. And I've always thrown artificials, and that's all I throw is artificials. I don't throw any live bait for any trout. I feel like that's more feeding them than it is fishing for them. So I'm a artificial fisherman.
All right. I'm going to accept that answer. You had me at I'm 51 and I've fished for him for 45 years. Question number
My
2,
dad-
Stu Caulder.
yes.
This is your non-fishing related question.
Oh
And I
boy.
took the play off of your charter boat, your charter business name, Gold Leader Guide Service. So
Okay.
as of this morning, Stu Caulder, how much would you guess that gold is currently worth per ounce?
I actually have no idea. Um, I got the name Gold Leader Fishing because Gold Leader is it's a squadron out of Star Wars. And I was a big Star Wars head, still am, and that's how I got my name. Actually has nothing to do with gold, except I liked those wire leaders that we used to use when we used to king mackerel fish when I was a kid. They were gold, and I was like, all right, well there it is, gold leader, and there's my. That's how I got my name.
Well, that certainly is a heartwarming story there, Stu, but I'm going to need a guess on what gold is worth per ounce.
I have no clue. I have no
Billy,
idea.
how about Stu?
Dude, I don't know. I should know this, but I don't
That's
know
lame. You
this.
don't even take a guess. Jeez.
I don't even know. Hold on a second. I gotta
What, you
Google.
Googling it?
Why am
Yeah.
I-
$1,800. Here, let me save you. $1,800 an ounce.
Eight,
You don't need to go Google it.
$1,800. Good Lord.
$1,800 an ounce.
Jeez.
All right.
Pigs in a blanket's fancy to me, boys. I don't know gold.
Stu, we've wasted too much time with these ancillary items. Let's get right to the meat of it. You had talked about fish patterns in the pregame and the pre-show talk. You talked about fish patterns moving from late fall into early winter patterns and then moving from early winter into late winter patterns. So
That's
please, let's go right into fish patterns. Take me at how these fish change moving from late fall into early winter, please.
Okay, well, the first scenario I'm going to talk about is going to be mainly fishing the intercoastal waterways and the beaches. And then I'll go into the river.
Perfect.
So right now, all this is going to be about is the intercoastal waterways or fishing the beaches. So what happens is right now, all the bait's moving down the beach. They're trying to get out of here. There's still plenty of mullet around. There's still pogies around, plenty of bait around. The ocean right now is warmer than the intercoastal waterway. So what that means is if we get a real cold snap, these fish are going to stay wherever there's a lot of ocean water flow coming in, because you have to think about cold water is like fire to us. It's just the exact opposite. It's just be that it's heat, but the fish they don't like very cold water because it'll kill them. Well, that's the same thing as it is kind of with fire from us. So when the water is warmer in the ocean and the water's pushing in, the fish are going to orient right now closer to the inlets, closer to the creeks that are near the inlets, and to the actual beaches themselves. Now, as the water temps drop and drop and drop, and that water on the inside gets a little bit colder, they're actually going to stay in there for a while until it reaches a certain temperature. I have found that usually 52, somewhere in that ball game, they tend to start looking for warm water situations. And warm water situations are either typically the beaches, in my case, around the rock jetties out there, or they're looking for areas where the water moves up and down, but it doesn't move in and out. That means the water that's in there stays in there, because that water tends to get heated up by the sun. So you have to kind of find these little areas that are warmer, and you got to use your scope to find it. And you kind of got to figure out, okay, I got to be away from the inlet, or I got to be on the beach where it's the warmest, or you have to be in an area where it is not moving, where it's just moving up and down, but it's not moving in and out. So you kind of want a dead end spot for that.
Can you give me an example of a locale where the water would be moving up and down and not in and out?
Well, somewhere like here, like behind Rice, will be somewhere like Lollipop.
Okay.
That doesn't get a lot of current flow at all. So that water doesn't transition very much. There's not a lot of movement on that water. So those banks will sit there and they'll actually bake. So right now we're in the early winter, late fall, early winter pattern. Right now the fish are aggressive. They're fattening up. The water temps are still good. You don't have to worry about them being too cold till they really drop below about 55. That's when you really have to kind of hone in what you're doing. Right now, anything near the inlets is probably going to be holding some type of fish. The creeks near the inlets, the actual inlets themselves, because they're aggressive. They're trying to fatten up for the wintertime right now. Um, as we transition more into the late winter, that's where they'll move to these warmer water areas because that cold water is too much for them. They'll move to the warmer water areas, and even if you find them in that cold water, it's going to be hard to get them to eat if the water is really cold. Now, this is just all the intercoastal waterway in the oceans. This is not the river. Now, the river in this early season, this early winter, this late fall, early winter pattern, they're at the lower part of the river. And then what happens is, as the water temps drop, you get a little further into the winter a little bit, they start moving upriver. And then as it gets colder, they move further upriver. And they'll move in the Cape Fear River, they'll go all the way past downtown. I've caught them up past Smith Creek, even past the bridge up there above Smith Creek. And same thing with the New River. As the water temps start to drop, right now, the fish they're already upriver in the New River right now, but there's fish in the lower part of the river too. As that water temp drops, these fish will start to just produce and move upriver and further upriver and further upriver.
So I follow everything we're talking about. I get this water temperature and how it's key to it. What are some other environmental areas that we're looking at? Like, it's not, of course you're following the water temp, but what else do you like in the ICW, structure wise, surrounding wise, habitat wise? And then again, after the ICW, if you take me through the same conversation in the river.
Sure. Mainly in the ICWs and around the inlets, the first thing you're looking for is bait. There's got to be some kind of bait, whether it's those little silver sides, if it's, I'm not sure really what they're called. They're kind of like a little grunt or something like that, but they're a small little silver fish with a little upturned mouth on them. And they really like those. If you ever find those guys, start fishing. Look for bait first if you can find it. The next thing you want to look for is you want to look for a little bit of current in the early season. They like current in the early season. They'll sit out of the eddies. They'll sit kind of off the side of the current, not necessarily right out in the middle of it, but they'll sit somewhere near the eddy or right near the drop, wherever the current kind of has just a little subtle break in it. They'll sit in that little subtle break. Look for your little creek mouse. Look for your oyster beds. And mainly, you have to get out there and you got to throw. You have to get out there. You got to put the baits in the water, and you got to throw, and you got to cover water. There's no real secret. It's not like, oh, if you do this, it's going to happen. It's really, hard work. You get out there, you fish a lot, you throw a lot, and when you find them, you remember where you got them, and you look at that scenario that you got them. What was the tide? What direction was the current flowing? What were you near? What type of bait did you see coming out of here? What did you see? What kind of drew you there? Because you got to realize the fish are looking for the same things, and you have to figure out what it is they're looking for. So in the ICW, I'm looking for good water, nice and clear. These fish up here in the ICW, they like clear water, clear, clean water. They want it nice. I'm looking for a little bit of current, maybe some little creek mouse, oyster beds, little breaks in those currents, little corners. If you're looking at a bank and you see just a straight flat bank, make a pass on it. Don't spend too much time unless you look down and you see the fish. But if you see a bank that has a lot of bends and a lot of corners on it, check that bank, because they'll use those corners. They may not be on this first corner. They may be on the second or the third corner, but check those little corners out because they like those current breaks. And remember what tide you hit those corners on, because they're going to probably set back up on those same tides. Now, down here at Wrightsville, we're lucky that we have these rock jetties. This season for the rock jetties is getting ready to start up. Once that water temp kind of drops down a little bit, The fish will sit up on the wall. They'll sit up on the ocean side of the Mason Burl jetty, the inside of the Mason Burl jetties. And what will really push those fish around a lot of times is cold fronts. When cold fronts come through, the fish tend to go deep. They may stay shallow, but the problem with that is the more that barometer changes, the more it affects the shallow water fish. So if you can find some deep fish and you have a cold front or something come through, go to those deep fish because those fish aren't going to feel the barometric pressure change as quickly and as harshly as the shallow water fish. So just keep that in mind because we get a lot of cold fronts this time of the year. And before the cold front, you get those kind of those gray overcast days. There's a lot of water moving. They move up shallow. They're feeding, they're busting baits, doing all that. But then you go back the next day and it's blowing northwest and it's bluebird sunny skies. And the fish will probably be still there, but they're feeling that barometer change and they really don't bite as well. They kind of get lockjaw. But if you go to those deep fish, say over 8 feet deep, they don't feel the pressure change as much. And those fish are more likely to eat than those shallow water fish. So we've got those conditions here for the waterways: water depth, water clarity, bait, the bank you're on, make sure it has good corners to it, lots of current breaks, and, just kind of look and you can kind of almost feel it. When I pull into an area, the first thing I do is I just stop and I look for just a little bit. I just sit there and look. I want to get a feeling for the area. I want to see, is the current flowing at the right speed that I like? I want a little bit of flow. Is it creating the eddies that I'm going to need? Is there enough bends? Are there maybe some birds standing on the bank? Are there some egrets? Am I seeing, life? Life breeds life. So if you're seeing pinfish underneath the boat, or you're seeing stingrays and crabs, if you're seeing life, you're probably in a pretty good area. But if you go to an area and you're not seeing a lot of life, you probably need to just move on.
All right, I like it, man. Life breeds life. I can hold on to that. Now, the audio is doing a little something. Did you cover the river as well, or was that all focused on ICW?
No, that was all the ICW. So what we're doing for the river
Okay.
is just a little bit different now. In the river, the next thing that affects it in the river is all those things I just said. Water clarity. In the river, sweet tea water is good water. Yoo-hoo water is bad water. If you're in an area and it looks like yoo-hoo, leave. You might get a bite here or there, but it's very tough. So sweet tea water is what I call it. If you can find good, clear, sweet tea water in the river, that's what you want. Look for rocks. There's more rocks in the river. Some of these little islands that have oyster corners on them or rock corners on them, if they've got an eddy on them, hit them. They may be sitting there, they may not, because they do move around in the river. Because the extra thing that affects them in the river, besides clarity and bait, the same things that affect them along the waterway is salinity. If you have a big rain, you may need to push down river just a little bit. If you don't have a lot of rain, you can slide where you were, or maybe even it's getting colder and colder, maybe even bump up river a little bit. The salinity is the extra factor in the river, especially for the Cape Fear, because we get so much flow all the way up from Raleigh. So if you get a big rain up in Raleigh and they release the water from the lakes up there, then all of a sudden you're going to have a lot of fresh water in the river. And that salinity level will affect where the fish sit. And more or less than anything, what it does is it pushes the shrimp around in the river. And once it starts pushing the shrimp around, the fish follow the shrimp. So in the river, you're looking for the same things: decent water. Look for sweet tea water. Look for your current breaks. Look for stretches of banks that have corners on them, not just a flat stretch bank. It's not to say that you won't catch them on those banks. You may get, you may run into a random school and find them sitting on that bank somewhere. and they may be there for a couple of days. They may have just found a little spot they like to get, and they'll sit there for a couple of days. But for the majority of the fish, you're looking for creek mouths, looking for bait, looking for life, looking for good water. Corners. Corners are a lot of it. They like eddies. They like current breaks, and then you just have to kind of watch the weather, see what the salinity is going to be. Get a lot of rain, bump back down river a little bit. If it doesn't rain too much, you can kind of stay where you are, or maybe even bump up river a little bit.
Man, all that's logical. All that's easy to follow. How about what you're going to throw at them, man? And this is an artificial only conversation. So
Yep.
give me the hit list. Give me the top lures.
Well, it's going to depend on the bait you see when you pull in there. Now, typically in this early season, the early winter, before the water, let's say before the water it drops below 55. Let's call that. That's kind of our break point. I mean, give or take a degree or two, but let's say 55 degrees. 55 degrees and up, I'll throw, on low light conditions, I'll throw a top water plug. The good thing about top water is you don't catch many small ones. You may not catch all of them, but the ones you will catch typically will be decent fish. I like to throw a good walking lure with a low pitch rattle in it. Preferably if you can get a top water walking lure that has the little beads in it. A lot of them nowadays aren't made with those little BBs in them. To me, they really like that little BB sound. I don't know what it is, but I have caught them really well on low pitch top water plugs with the little BBs in it versus um, these other top water walkers that are kind of loud. They kind of make that loud clack, clack, clack noise. I don't know if it's too much for them. Not that I haven't caught them on those lures too, but I've found that I've caught more quality fish when I'm throwing top water on baits that have the little BBs in it. And the same thing with my jerk baits. I'll throw X wraps, or I'll throw some type of maybe like a bomber long A, the mirror lure baits, the 52Ms or the TT baits. Also the MR17s or 18s, depending on how much current there is. If you're in a lot of current, you may have to go to an 18. If your current isn't too bad, you may have to, you can get away with a 17, but sometimes a 17 won't get down all the way. If you're in only a couple feet of water, it'd probably be good. Of course, your soft plastic's got to be in there. I throw a lot of DOA baits. I love them. I've been throwing them since I can remember pretty much. And the DOA shrimp, man, it's just a proven good bait for me. You can put it on a popping cork or you can fish it bare. Either way, it doesn't matter. I like the paddle tail baits. Now, as we get into a little more current, you may have to go to the fork tail baits just to get them down to the bottom, but still use a light head. Sometimes that paddle tail will want to surf up in the current a little bit. So if I'm in water a little bit deeper, say I'm fishing after a cold front and I'm having to fish out in that, 6-8 foot of water and a little bit of current, I'll go to fork tail baits just so I can get those fork tail baits down on the bottom where they're going to be sitting after that front. So, a lot of soft plastics, the DOA shrimp, some of the cow, shad tail bait. My jerk baits are going to be typically X wraps, maybe bomber long A's. I'll throw a lot of the mirror lure baits, a lot of MR17s, a lot of MR18s, kind of depending on, like I said, current. Mirror lures this time of the year, man, I love a good mirror lure bite. You just can't beat that thump on a mirror lure, especially at night. A good nighttime bite on a mirror lure, that rock wall at Masonboro on a big moon from now until February, man, some nights you'll get out there and catch a bunch, and one night you may not catch many, but you're going to catch one big one. That's kind of a special thing, getting out there at night and fishing those mirror lures. I love a good mirror lure bite. And those are probably the majority of the baits. Now I will switch it up a little bit during different types of the year as to what I'm kind of throwing. But for the winter time, I can be a little more aggressive in water temp above 55 degrees. As that water temp drops below 55, give or take 56, 54, somewhere in that ball game, maybe even 53. Once it starts to drop below those temperatures and gets cold, that's when you really have to settle things down, and they have to be not quite as aggressive. But I kind of have a hard time fishing slow, so sometimes it's difficult for me to slow down sometimes.
Man, what about color? Like that was a pretty detailed conversation about
Mhm.
topwater, jerk baits, and soft
Mhm.
plastic. How does color selection factor in any of that?
Now, up here, from let's say, Bear and Browns Inlet all the way to Carolina Beach Inlet, the water is really clear. So I go more natural colors in that type of situation. Um, I'll keep things, close to either, like if I'm fishing and there's little croakers or those little silver sides I was telling you about with the little upturned snouts, white on white. I don't know what it is, but if I'm in that type of bait scenario, a white back, white belly bait with a silver side on it is on. Um, if I'm around mullet, I'll try, the blue backs, the green backs, the gray backs, some type of those natural baits, try to mimic those mullet. If I'm in Menhaden, I'll drop more Menhaden colors, more olive color backs. Maybe a little bit of pink on the sides of some of them. They make one, Mirror Lure makes one, I think it's called a rainbow. I want to say a rainbow trout color. I think it's what it is. It's like an olive green back with a white belly, and it's got like a pink fade on the side of it. That's a good bait when you're around a bunch of menhaden. They really love that thing, and that works good up here and in the river. And this is all early season. Now, as you go into that colder water, the colors change a little bit. But in the early season, I'm trying to mimic those fish that are seen up here in this clear water. Top water plugs, Old Faithful, redhead, white body. You can't beat it. I don't know. I've been throwing it since I was little. My granddad threw it. It worked. Um, but I will switch it up and throw maybe that bone color a lot. Uh, Throw some of those clearer bellied baits. They make some clear bellied top water plugs that work really well. And depending on how windy it is, that's where I start to vary um, the pitch that I throw. If it's real windy and choppy, I'm throwing high pitch. If it's real calm and real quiet, I'll throw, a low pitch bait, even the little BBs. If I can find them, get top water plugs with the BBs in them, I'll throw those, or top waters with nothing in them. If it's just oil slick calm out there, the calmer it is, the more subtle you got to be, because these fish, trout, are very sensitive, and in that clear water, they're even more sensitive, it seems like, because now they've got really good vision too. So they're already dial things in with their lateral lines. They can feel the vibrations. They are a hunting machine, and they are very sensitive. This clear water, drop your leaders down below 15-pound fluorocarbon, natural colored, soft plastics, natural colored jerk baits. That white on white X wrap is a killer. If you're searching and you don't know the area you're at and the water's above 55 degrees, put a white on white X wrap, throw it up on the bank on high tide, pop it 2 or 3 times and let it sit. Pop it 2 or 3 times and let it sit. And when it's sitting still, they're going to bang that thing. If it's above 55 degrees, a white on white X wrap, man, that's a give me right there. Um, the shrimp up here, the DOA shrimp, I'll go with that near clear color a lot up here. Um, I go with the one that clear with the red fleck in it. That's a great clear water bait up here. Just natural color baits up here in this clear water. Now in the river, things are a little bit different. You have to kind of match. The sun plays more of a role in that dark water. as to what you actually are going to throw. Now, top waters doesn't really matter too much. I throw a lot of the 808 color, which is the orange belly, black back. I throw a lot of the redhead white body top water. Um, I'll throw the bone color a lot. That one works really well. I'll throw the chartreuse belly, the gold side, and the chartreuse back, top pup or the she pup. I like the smaller ones. I like the pups better than I like the dogs. They tend to get in their mouth a little bit better. Then rather than hooking them on the side of the face, I'll actually have a hook in the mouth. So I like the pups better than I like the actual dogs that they make, MirrOlure makes. And the colors will vary. You'll get some bright ones. You may even get some dark ones. Some days, if the water's really dirty, I'll throw that chartreuse head with the black body. Early and low light conditions for topwater plugs. Now, my my mirror lures, my jerk baits, any of my hard swimming type baits, I'll throw them some pinks. I like pinks a lot. Pinks, it just works. I'll throw some stuff with maybe a chartreuse bottom, maybe a chartreuse back. Not too much chartreuse, but a little flash of it is good, because if you've ever looked at a menhaden, his tail, it almost has a chartreuse look to it. If you hold it up and look at it, he's got it looks like a little bit of chartreuse in the tail. So I'll throw some chartreuse bait, just a little bit of chartreuse in there somewhere. As far as one of my go-to grubs in the river is the redhead with the root beer paddle tail. And the paddle tail is actually chartreuse. So it's root beer chartreuse paddle tail with a redhead. Man, that's a good one in the river. Everything eats it. Drum, trout, flounder, they all eat it. It's a good one in the river. And then if I'm further downriver, say I'm down maybe near Bald Head on a rising tide, when that clear greenish water kind of comes in the river instead of the brown water, which is a little bit further upriver, I'll throw a little more natural colors down there. And as I move into that transition into that darker browner water, I transition over to kind of my darker baits a lot of times.
Well, man, that was just what I was hoping to get out of you. I mean, that was detailed information on some color, not just color choices, but the theory behind why, or the reasoning behind why certain colors. And in that conversation, you've already sort of hit on a lot of what we were going to move into next, which is just some presentation notes when it comes to these different artificials. So though you've already done it, I think that's where we need to wrap up. You know, with that last topic, I can't let it go. So Stu, how about walking me through, you know, the topwater, the soft plastic, the jerk baits, you know, giving me a little bit more on presentation, something perhaps you might not have touched on in that detailed lure description.
Sure. The angle of your presentation is everything. And that's where I think a lot of people struggle, is the angle of their presentation. They're not using the current to help them present the bait in the proper manner, where you're actually going to be able to feel the bite, control the lure, hold the lure in the position you need to hold it in, and also maybe even tweak the bait so that the bait will arc a certain direction. That's mainly all on where you position your boat, the angle that you're throwing, your trajectory of your lure as you throw it, and then how the current is going to pull on your line as it's in the water. And it's a lot to think about, but in order to be successful, you really have to think about that, is the angle of presentation with the current, with the type of bait you're using, because with different baits, the angle of presentation changes. Like with an X-Wrap, the lip on the X-Wrap is going to hold the bait down in position. So I'll anchor up current from where I want to hit, because I can throw that X-Wrap down current and put it to the point or to the corner or to the eddy or whatever I'm trying to hit. I'll pull that bait down, bang it a few times, and let it sit. And as I let it sit, I'm using that current to, one, keep my line tight and also keep it nice and sensitive to my rod, because they're going to hit it while it's sitting absolutely still. So I'm using the current to help me, but you have to position your boat right. Now with mirror lures, it's kind of the same thing. You can actually, you heard guys say they tune a mirror lure. You can tune a mirror lure to arc off a certain direction by how you turn those little eyelets on the mirror lure. And everybody says, oh, well, I want it to run absolutely straight. Well, not all the time do you want it to run absolutely straight. If I'm anchored up current and I have a little corner down there and I want to throw behind the corner and work it around the edge of that corner, well, then I just tweak that eyelet a little bit. That way I can throw, let the current push it, and then I can work that bait in an arc right around that corner. And that allows me to run a shallow one, a mid depth, and a deeper one, and fish right off the drop where those fish will be with that mirror lure, because there's a certain little area that you're going to find those fish. And if I can work my bait successfully around that area and keep it in the strike zone longer, then I'm going to get bit a little bit more. So presentation, how you angle your cast, how you use the current is huge. And it took me a long time to figure out how to make a mirror lure arc around a corner and get it to stay in position and actually have the action that you wanted to do. But you can do that. You can arc those things around the corners based off the current. And it's all about turning that eyelet on the top. You just have to play with it. So, and I'm sure you've seen it where you guys have thrown them before and they want to arc off to the left or to the right, and you bring them to the boat and you straighten that thing up. Well, that arc off to the left or right can come in handy depending on what type of situation you're at. Now, the exact opposite is true when I'm fishing, say, a DOA shrimp in a popping cork. With a DOA shrimp in a popping cork, I'm throwing it up current, and then I'll fish it back to me because the cork is my indicator. So I don't have to worry about feeling the bite so much. As soon as I see that cork going, boom, I know he's there. Now, I can also fish that away from me too, because I can throw it short and feed out 6 feet of line, give it a snap and let it drift. Give it a snap, feed out another 6 feet of line, flip the bail, follow it down, pop it again. So where you position your boat with the particular baits that you're using allow you to present things in different manners, but that presentation of how you show them the bait is everything. And if you really want to get away from, throwing a cheeseburger at them all the time, go over to artificials, because you're actually fishing a little bit more rather than feeding them. I mean, you throw a live shrimp in front of a trout, guess what? He's going to eat it. And, a live shrimp with a treble hook, a 4-year-old can catch a trout with a live shrimp and a treble hook. But you give somebody, a DOA shrimp and they got to fool them into biting, that's a whole nother ball game. And that's where it comes into, I kind of feel like I like knowing that I've actually fished for them with artificials and tricked them into biting this bait rather than throwing a cheeseburger out there in front of them.
Man, you just helped me win $10, man. I bet Billy $10 that you're going to use the cheeseburger analogy when you're talking about trout. So, man, I appreciate that. It's going to buy me a couple of beers. I appreciate you being
just for you, my
predictable.
man.
I appreciate you being predictable with the cheeseburger analogy, man.
You're welcome, my man.
Stu, 20 plus years, you're more than a trout guy. I think we've brought our winter trout. I mean, I know we could go on and on. We brought today's winter trout discussion to an end.
We didn't even get to go into the cold water situation. So we're going to have to do this again, because I didn't even get to talk about fishing below 55 degrees.
We are going to do it. We're not going to do it tonight. We're going to do it we're going to make a date. We're going to make a January date.
Perfect.
And we're going to talk about below 55. I like
Sounds
it.
great.
I need to fill up the January calendar. So not only did you make me $10, now you're helping me fill up my calendar.
All right.
But
good,
for
man.
this episode, why don't you tell everyone what Goal Leader is doing throughout the calendar year? Start in the spring, sort of
Sure.
walk me through some of the
Okay.
targets other than trout that Goal Leader likes to focus on.
Sure. Well, okay. Well, year round, I'm focusing on trout. I trout fish year round. Spring, summer, fall, winter. I trout fish all year round. But let's say we're starting in March. We've already been striper fishing pretty much all winter. So I'll striper fish. Once we get into April, I'll still always trout fishing. There's always trout in there somewhere. I'll transition over to the drum. I really like drum fishing a lot in the spring and the summer and in the fall, especially throwing spinner baits up in the grass. That's a super fun. That's just a fun day. Beating the banks up, dropping the trolling motor, burning your batteries up, and just throwing till you can't throw anymore. And it's just spinner baits coming out of the grass, and they just clobber those things. That is a blast for me, and I do that all summer long. Spring, summer, fall. I love throwing those spinner baits for those redfish and top orders and stuff, but mainly spinner baits and top orders for the reds. That's a huge thing for me also. Now, once June gets here, I got to go for the cobias. I'll go sight fishing for cobias. I love the way they taste, so I like to catch a couple to eat. We throw that big DOA big fish lure at them. We cast at them. It's like a big soft plastic jerk bait, and they clobber that thing. I do a lot of sight fish for cobias. I like to go down in the summertime and cast at tarpon. There's a lot of tarpon on the south facing beach and on the east beach. And we'll go down there on the right conditions and drop the trolling motors and cast at different pods of tarpon. That's a lot of fun to do in the middle of summer. I'll mess with the king mackerel a little bit. I kind of got to break it up a little bit in the summertime. Maybe go slow troll for kings. Maybe bust off the beach, maybe 8 or 10 miles one day, and go hit a ledge or hit some stuff out that way and troll for a few kings. Once we get back into the fall again, it's pretty much for me back inshore. I tend to go right back at the drum and the trout. And then I'll run that all the way through the wintertime, the drum, the trout, and then we just start adding the stripers in there. Once it gets into like November, we're adding striper trips in there too, a little bit further upriver. And so, yeah, pretty much year round, we're catching something. And, here in the dead of winter, when it gets really cold, for me, I have a tough time slowing down at fishing. So I have a tough time trout fishing in, February when it's really cold, but the striper bite is still really good, and the drum and the surf are really fun. So we'll run the beaches for the redfish, find those big schools of 400 or 500 fish, and catch them in the surf, or we'll go in the river and we'll go throw some good hard baits or some good soft plastics for stripers in the river, because you can fish fast, you can fish aggressive for those guys. So that pretty much sums up about my year. That's about what I do year round.
Well, right on, man. I've thoroughly enjoyed reconnecting with you here via podcast.
Absolutely.
Reminds me of the good old days of early Fisherman's Post when captains
right.
such as yourself would stop by the office and actually put a physical photo in my hand. That's
That's
how we're dating
right.
ourselves. Handing me a physical photo is the roots of Fisherman's Post and the Stu Caulder, Gary Hurley relationship. Thank you, man.
Right.
I was sincere to say we'll have you back in January. We'll talk about under 55-degree
Absolutely.
trout fishing in the wintertime. But for tonight, thank you very much, Stu.
Absolutely, man. Call me anytime whenever you're ready to go, and we'll get it all set up and we'll do it again.
Right on.
All right, brother.
Thank you, man. Billy.
you.
What's up, Gary?
Welcome back, Billy.
Such a good episode. I was just
It
hanging
was,
out,
man.
taking lots of notes. A lot of takeaways, man. A lot of takeaways. I thought my one takeaway was going to be the big moon on the Mason Borough inlet trout fishing at night, because I like to trout fish at night. But it actually
And you don't have a boat. Have we covered that you don't have a boat?
I don't
So
have a
fishing
boat,
from the rock wall.
So that would be tough.
No, you can. You can get there. You can do some of that short. I thought that's why you locked in on it, is because you can actually do that without a boat. Some of it.
Yeah, some of it. So I like that. But then when you started talking about tuning those mirror lures, I've never heard that before, man. I'm like, all right, I'm going to start twisting them up, see what I can do. That sounds fun.
That would have been my guess as your takeaway, because I think that was sort of what one of the elements that resonated with me, and I have found myself playing this unofficial game of guess what Billy's best takeaway is going to be.
I mean, well, next time we're gonna have you guess, and I'll tell you if you're right or not.
Or I'll write it down. I don't know, but I don't want you to pick a takeaway based on stumping me. I really want to hear your best takeaway from the podcast. Hey,
Oh man, it's been good.
wrap us up, man. Stu gave us good information. Let's put this episode in the box, and we'll make a plan to talk to him in January.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, once again, we just want to thank you, everyone, for checking us out, watching, listening. Once again, I'll just share this slide with you real quick. If you're watching, you can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, Google Podcasts, and most recently, Amazon Music. And then also you can watch on YouTube. And be sure to subscribe to those channels. We're really passionate about connecting with our audience on there. And make sure you leave us a comment. We're always listening to your comments as well. And then once again, Gary, Marine Warehouse Center, making it all happen here on the Fisherman's Post podcast, and have a lot of fun. So I'm excited what those guys come up with next, and what food you share on the next episode. Got me
Terrell,
curious.
man, that guy's crazy. I opened up a Pandora's box when I said, "Hey, you want to hang out a little and talk about this podcast?"
Oh,
I mean,
man.
he's a great host, but a
I'm-
very enthusiastic one. I mean, I need to cool it a little bit, perhaps.
Yeah, man, I'm a little jealous. I'm a little jealous of the relationship, but whatever. I like corny jokes. So I'm enjoying it. Thanks a lot, Gary.
Billy Thorpe, thank you, man.
Yep, we'll see you next time.